It is a 1-star versus 1-star wedding cake off, and I have a sneaky challenging cake for them because this cake is beautiful and is stunning. And honestly, it doesn't look, I don't think at first glance that it's that extravagant or challenging of a cake, but it is. So when we look, it is all green, and that is a dark shade of green. And for someone who loves dark, bold shades, they're actually really hard to achieve. You have to add so much color into them that whatever you're working with, like if it's fondant, it can get really gummy. The colors don't always incorporate properly, so you end up with more of a marble look, or it fades. Dark, bold colors are the hardest colors to achieve, so that is number one. I always find square edges make more elevated cake, but they are harder to achieve. These flowers, if we just look at this one flower right here, it is an ivory flower, but it almost looks like it has like a gold or metallic center, and they're handmade flowers. These are gum paste flowers. That takes a lot of skill, and the fact that you've got like the metallic working with the white, you're gonna get metallic fingerprints on the white if you are not careful. If you look at all of these little details that they have around the cake, they're so pretty. It looks like they've used some sort of impression silicone mold for their gum paste that they then laid on top of the cake and dusted in almost a matching green, but a metallic green. So even though I feel like at glance, this doesn't look like that challenging of a cake, I was hoping it'd be sneaky challenge. Do they think they can achieve it, or is it kind of sneaky challenging? They won't realize until like they're into it. I wanna see, but let's first see why they're considered 1-star bakeries. Kyle, to our shock and disappointment, the cake we received was nothing like what we ordered, and the additional decorative swirls they added were poorly executed. Many were uneven, faded, or missing altogether. We spoke to a gentleman who offered a 10% discount, dismissing our concerns despite the fact that the cake was not what we asked for. This level of customer service was appalling, especially for a business charging premium prices. The company has since taken their unprofessionalism to a shocking level. Instead of contacting us directly, they called my wife's workplace in an attempt to intimidate us into removing our reviews.
How'd they even get the work number?
John T said, a terrible experience. I was willing to let go when they messed up the correct picture that was supposed to go on my daughter's birthday cake, but then we cut the cake. How do you send the wrong flavored cake? Instead of apologizing and a full refund, I was asked to drive 30 minutes to bring back any uneaten portion of the cake for investigation. They would only offer me a refund of 85% if the cake wasn't eaten. That's a lot to expect in the middle of a birthday party. Amanda wrote, bad attitude from the owner when I had many issues with my wedding cake that came in horrid condition. But his peanut gallery of a wife who likes to stick her nose in business that does not concern her was the icing on the cake. They refused to refund you, but instead threatened to sue you if you make a bad review. Keith, I've been a loyal and dedicated customer since 2002. Most recently, I ordered a cake for my 50th birthday. Upon receiving and opening the cake, I was appalled by its appearance. I cannot comprehend how any professional bakery would consider this final product acceptable for delivery to a customer. I am utterly disappointed and frustrated that my cake was served without icing on top, as I felt compelled to scrape off the top layer due to its unappealing presentation. I strongly believe that the individual responsible should be held accountable and should not be involved in the production of any future cakes. Well, let's see the cake. I can look.
Just a sec, I gotta wash the stickies off my hands.
Stickies?
Yeah, the stickies. You can look.
Okay, so my first thought was, oh, pretty. And then I was like, oh, wait, this isn't at all what I ordered. That's not the same cake. This is what I ordered. This is what we got. This to me is giving, I really love this cake, but I don't have the budget for it. So can you do a cake for like $150, $200? That can give me that, but with a cheap budget, because it has the essence of the cake. It does. I mean, you've got the 3 tiers, it's got the green, it's not quite the right shade of green. This green is more of an emerald. It feels like it has more of a blue undertone, whereas this green is feeling a little bit more forest with a little bit more of a yellow undertone. But that is like, if I really want to get into the color of green. The flowers aren't even that bad. They are kind of white ivory flowers, and they do have some gold metallic elements. They are not the same flowers. So these are ones that you can buy at a high-end cake decorating store that are factory made sugar flowers. If you were gonna hand make them, they would have been challenging a lot of time, which is what you would expect when you're saying this is what I want. So the bakery that did this obviously doesn't have the skill to make the handmade flowers, but that's where I think communication is so important to say like, yes, we can do flowers, but just so you know, they will look like this, and give me an example of one you've already done. And I can say, yes, I'm comfortable with that, or no, I'm not. Right? But when you just do it, it's like, well, that's not what I ordered. But the biggest thing here is the piping. The random like vines and leaf piping. They're green on green. They're not hand piped. Those are molded and placed onto the cake, I think. And they're done with metallic. So if I was a bride and I ordered this cake and got this cake, I think immediately my thought would be like, this isn't what I ordered. And I think the biggest problem is this like beige piping that's on the side. I think even if they piped it and they had done green on green, it wouldn't be glaring. I feel like they would have captured the essence a little bit more, and it wouldn't be like, hold on, that's a different cake. You know what I mean? Now let's look at those challenging elements that I was specifically looking for. I love that they covered the cake board. Yes, they've used a cheaper silver cake board, but they covered it in green, similar to the photo, extra points. A lot of bakeries miss that. I think that their fondant work is pretty great. I think they need to steam their fondant. We've got blotches of white. So when they're rolling out their fondant, it would have gotten some like icing sugar or cornstarch in it. And if you just took a steamer to that, that would have melted that off. It would have given a little bit of sheen, but honestly would have helped with the depth of color anyways. But it's really a tiny detail. It's not bad. I think that their fondant work, all in all, for One Star Bakery, I'm pretty impressed. And the proportions of the cake are similar. I feel like these ones, the tiers are a little bit taller, but realistically, that's not that big of a deal. Like, I really do think that they're pretty similar and they did a good job with that. And I think that the flowers they chose are pretty. I think that they are really beautiful flowers, even though they're factory made. I think that their use of trying to incorporate the metallic into the white flowers is done really well. If you look at how delicately they've brushed the metallic on the leaves, it looks beautiful. It is not the same flowers, but that again, I just circling back to communication. I think if you just communicate what is doable, then you're not gonna let down customers and they're not gonna leave bad reviews. And I think that's honestly what comes down to the bad reviews when you're talking about design and not taste. Taste, I'm excited to see what it tastes like. Now compared to the reviews, I agree that it's not what I ordered. Somebody says, I want this picture, you gotta give them that picture. Now for the customer service. So through the process of ordering it, I'd spoken to him on the phone and he had messaged me information. That information conflicted. He basically said, I recorded our conversation, and in our recorded conversation, it said this, which I think is really interesting that they're just recording their customers' conversation. Regardless, he said, sorry, and I'll give you $20 off for the mistake. So it's kind of funny because it was supposed to be a bigger cake, and then he's like, it's the same price, and then give me $20 off. So the customer service there was kind of funny. How was the customer service when he dropped it off?
He was good. He was friendly.
No issue?
No.
So like, I would say the customer service wasn't bad. I would say that like the interaction ordering it was funny, but not like a bad experience. Now let's talk about the price of the cake, because the comments are saying that's a high-end wedding cake bakery. They were paying high-end prices and it didn't deliver on that. How much was it again?
$3.95.
$3.95. Honestly, for this cake, for what we ordered, I would assume it'd be closer to $700 at a high-end bakery, maybe $800, maybe even more, depending where you live. But it is a high-end cake. So that is half that price of what I would have expected to cost. So I wouldn't say that's a high-end bakery price. I don't feel like the execution is quite there to be a luxury cake. So I think I would price this more around $250, $300.
So you're gonna taste it at the end of the video, but what would you give a rating for the decorations?
It's hard because if I didn't look at the picture and I didn't really consider the price, I think it's a really beautiful cake. I think they executed really well, but I have to consider that. I have to consider what I ordered, how much I paid, and what I got. So considering that, 3.5 stars. It's mainly because if this was a $150 cake, I would say 4.5 stars. You know what I mean? But because it was kind of expensive and they didn't deliver exactly what I want, I feel like that's where I lower the star rating. Let's read the next bakery's reviews. Riley, extremely stale. Cupcake was so hard, I could knock on it with my knuckles and it made a noise. The cakes are horrible. Jaspel, worst cake ever. It was totally stale. It was very hard from the outside. It spoiled all of our celebration. I haven't ever experienced this much bad experience for a cake ever. It looked beautiful from the outside, but it was totally dry and ooh, the worst taste. Sadia, please read before you purchase cake from these people. It tasted horrible. Dry and cheap. It is majorly hard, thick, tasteless butter icing with very minimal amount of dry, stale cake inside with zero moisture. It tasted old, even though I ordered it fresh. I could not even cut the cake properly because of the hard, thick, frozen icing. Not edible at all. I feel like you absolutely scammed. For $85 I spent and upset this on my daughter's birthday. I'm seeing some common trends here. Alicia, based on my experience and the other 20 guests, the cakes were very dry. I'm not sure if the cake was even fresh, as it was just crumbling like sand when we were cutting into it. Their prices were also ridiculously high compared to other bakeries. I would not advise this bakery. All my guests were turned off. Well, from the reviews, it sounds like the cake might look good on the outside, but taste horrible on the inside. I guess let's see what we got. You drinking water? Can I look?
I was thirsty. Yes, you can look.
Oh wow, oh my gosh.
Feels like you just got attacked.
It's so different. Let me go get the iPad. I mean, I feel like that's pretty great. It's not exactly what I ordered, but it's a lot closer than the first cake. The color alone, this is definitely more of that blue-green I was looking for and less of that yellow-green. I feel like these proportions are closer. They're definitely different impressions, which like, I'm not surprised by because like it's hard to find something that'd be exactly the same, but it is giving similar. I will say they don't look as like, the other ones look a lot more detailed. There's a lot more smaller pieces. This is more big pieces, but honestly, it's giving the same general concept and I think it's very pretty. I see they use like a mold to create the balls that go around for consistency. It looks really pretty. The flowers are the biggest thing. These are obviously not the flowers that are on the cake, nor was I told that they were gonna use fake flowers on the cake. These are cheaper flowers that you probably find at the dollar store. That's not exactly what you expect. Now, if the bakery said, I can't do those flowers, but I can do something like this. This is giving this. If like I just walked into a wedding venue and I looked at that, it looks beautiful, and at it, like honestly, from afar, they are very similar, way more similar than I feel like the first cake. The fondant work to me looks pretty flawless. I'm not seeing any marks with icing sugar. It looks extremely smooth. Honestly, it's very consistent colors. Again, this is a hard, bold color to achieve. They achieved the bold color and they achieved it without any marbling. Like they must have really needed their hands of fondant. I remember needing this amount of fondant with this dark of color, like your hands would be hurting for days from eating that. I genuinely love it. I think that they did a really, really great job. I think that the flower placement is also similar. Even you can see they've got the vines kind of coming up around here and here, but there's this little hole, that little hole there, like it's there. They really did look at the picture for reference and try to replicate it. What do you think, Kev?
Kind of weird, the top of the cake with the lumps of fondant holding the flowers.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at that too. They just have these like lumps of fondants, I think, covering up the stems of the flowers, and I don't think that was necessary. Usually when I have something like that, I cover it up with leaves. This feels like a sloppy, lazy way of covering up stems where they could have just cut out extra leaves and placed that over there and you would not see them. The other thing is the board is not covered. I like that it is a thick white board and not silver, but at the same time it's not covered in fondant, which the board here is. To me, it looks like a $400 cake. Like it looks more high-end than the first one. Is it all cake?
No, the bottom tier is styrofoam.
The bottom tier is styrofoam. That changes things. I was gonna say, if this is all cake, I can see this going up more to like $450, $500. With the bottom tier only being cake and the rest being styrofoam.
No, opposite.
Huh?
The bottom tier is a styrofoam.
Okay.
Maybe that's a bad thing that you're not able to tell. Maybe the reviews are right.
Because it's so dry and hard.
Did you try the knock test?
Because the fondant would make a knock sound, but that's very funny. If one tier or two tiers are cake, yeah, I feel like the $450 range is okay. But how much was it?
It was $450.
Okay, I would say it's worth it for its price because again, I would be paying more like $700, $800 for what I ordered, but I would still expect a delicious cake for a wedding. So let's cut into it. $395, $450. I mean, definitely closer to what I asked for. Bigger cake, closer color, for $50 more, wow. Let's see how they compare in flavor. So they're both chocolatey coffee flavors. This one is a chocolate mocha. This one is a chocolate cha-cha, which I was looking on their website, how they described it, is a chocolate sponge cake with layers of Brazilian cafe flavored custard. So they both should have a chocolatey cafe flavor, which is what I was kind of looking for to compare them. Let's start with this one. Now they were accused of giving some customers the wrong flavor of cake. Okay, looks like chocolate with something. Really moist. It doesn't have a lot of flavor. It doesn't exactly taste like cake. It kind of tastes like really moist bread. It's not sweet or buttery. It very much tastes like chocolate bread with icing and a bit of coffee flavor in there. So I'm not the biggest fan of the actual cake itself.
You want to give it a rating?
Okay, so for flavor, like a 1 star is a really bad cake. So I'm gonna give it a 2 star because it's not a really bad cake, it's just not a good cake. It's not a cake I would ever wanna order again based on the flavor. But the coffee flavor is in there, it's definitely not bad. Let's see if the top is cake. Oh, the top is cake. Should I stab it to see if it's cake?
Sure.
Oh, it's cake. Okay, that's not cake. When we ordered it, they said that that's not chocolate.
Is that what they said? Is one tier different flavor than the other?
It's just supposed to be mocha. Oh no, that still smells like coffee. I was assuming like it'd be like a chocolate mocha, but maybe it's just mocha. Let's see how it...
Does it seem dry?
It doesn't make a sound when I knock. And honestly, that doesn't seem dry at all. It doesn't seem like sand when you cut it. A little bit, I guess, when you do that. But it doesn't have that dryness that like I've seen in other cakes. So let's see if it tastes dry. No, I'm distracted by the flavor because the flavor is actually really good. It's not dry. That is not a dry cake. I feel like they must have finally listened to all the reviews. That's a very moist cake. I feel like the cake itself tastes good, but the filling here is the winner. The filling is actually really tasty. I feel like that's where all the coffee flavor is in. I give the flavor a 4 star probably. I mean, it's not quite the 4 of like top tier cakes that I've tasted, but at the same time, like I think anyone would be really happy with that. So I think, yeah, probably closer to a 4 star flavor. So wow, the difference. I mean, $50 more. The funny thing is this one had worst reviews for its design, and I kind of see that coming through, but not a lot of people are talking about its flavor. The flavor is actually where I feel like this one really let it down. Whereas this one, everyone was talking about the flavor being so bad, and it's actually so much better, and it's actually a really good tasting cake. Not just in comparison, but just generally. So I feel like this Bakeries has a lot more work to do, and I feel like this one's finally catching on to the reviews. Let me know your thoughts and how you would rank these ones. Love ya.